Steamrollers. This is a dice game with a train theme. What you see here is a prototype or early copy. I think that the final version will look a little different, especially the box will not look like doubles as a pizza box, but that's okay. This is, again, it's a prototype. I got the privilege of being able to play the game early. I'm okay with the pizza box. Yeah, the publisher asked me to take a look at it. The game seemed interesting, and so I thought, why not? The game is gonna be on Kickstarter soon, so that's where you're going to find it if you're interested in the game after I show it to you in the next month or so, and then in the future it will be released in the general market, I believe. Steamrollers plays with 1 to 5 players. Yes, it has a solitaire option, and it is a natural solitaire option in which you're playing against an AI. The scores points. You're not just playing solitaire and trying to beat your previous score. You're fighting against an actual AI, again, that has her own victory conditions. Her name is Stacy or Olive or something. In any case, it's a fairly simple dice game, very casual, but a little more than a filler. There's more thinking here going on than just a simple, 10-minute filler. The box has about 30 minutes, which seems about right to me. Steamrollers, let's take a closer look. The play area is divided in 3 main sections. You have a resource board, you have an area where you will place special action tiles, and then each player will have a sheet of paper such as this one that is used to draw the network that the players will build during the game and to keep track of the score and also the speed or the power of your engines. Now, the resource board. During setup, you will draw wooden cubes from a bag and you will place color cubes in each city. These cities are identified by numbers. The board is divided in 6 areas of 5 different colors: yellow, blue, green, red, gray, and the other gray. When you draw cubes, you place them in each city, but you need to make sure that the cubes are not of the same color as the area in which they are. In the start of the game, if that happens, such as gray with gray, you simply remove those cubes. There's also a mini expansion that includes black cubes, and in that case, when there is a cube of the same color as the area in which the cube should go, the cube is not removed without a replacement. It is replaced by a black cube. These black cubes represent coal, and they are wild goods, as we'll see later. And also there are these black dots that are town. Now, how does the game work? Well, there is a first player that will take the first player token, and then the players will roll this black die. Well, the first player will roll this black die and a number of white dice equal to the number of players plus 1. So this for 2 players. We roll the dice, and then I cheat a little bit to give you different numbers and a better example. And then the players will take action, starting with the first player. That player can select a die and use it to perform an action. Then the next players takes another die and continue like this until each player has selected a die and performed an action. At that point, you pass the first player marker token to the next player and you repeat the procedure. This is the standard idea. Get a die, perform an action. Now, what are the actions that you can perform, you ask? That's a great question. One important action is to build track, and that really is the heart of the game. You build track by drawing lines on your board. If you select a die, then you can draw a track in the area corresponding to that die. 5 for this area, 6 for this area, and so on and so forth. Which type of track you can build is determined by the black die. You can choose one of the 2 available types of tracks. So here, I would be this kind of thing, from one X side to an adjacent X side, and then this one from an X side to a non-adjacent X side, but still taking a little bit of a curved away. So for example, I select this die here, 5, and I decide, oh, what happened? Oh, to use that one, because this is the side that I rolled, and then I draw a connection like that. Like that. You cannot draw in or into areas that represent cities that have the die, but you can and should draw through into in and through areas that contain towns. For example, then next turn, suppose that again there is a 5. I pick up the 5 again, and I decide to draw here. I decide to draw that connection there, and that's it. So this is an important action. Also, you can only draw once in each hex, so once it's done. You cannot have multiple connections. You can also not loop things around. Well, I guess you can when you're drawing it, but then you cannot use them when you deliver goods, so what is the point? So after a while, maybe your personal board will start looking like this. Actually, no, why don't I show you the other side, which is how my score sheet looked like at the end of one of my games. So it may look like something like this. So very important action, get a die, draw tracks. Another action that you can do is to select a special action token. So if I spend a die, I can get the special action token that corresponds to that number. This with a 1, this with a 4. Some are one-time use, as identified by that lightning bolt there. Some are infinite. Well, not until the end of time. Truly, is a metaphor. It means for as long as you hold this tile, you can keep using its ability. The tiles also have a number here, which is the number of victory points that you lose or earn at the end of the game if you have that tile at the end of the game. When you spend a die to get one of these tokens, you get it from wherever it is, which is you may take it from the general area if no one is controlling the tile at that point, or you take it from another player if they control it when you take it. Also, the tiles are double-sided with different effects, so that increases the number of different things that players may be able to do during the game. And these tiles allow you, for example, to use 2 white dice instead of 1, to draw any type of track that you want without being limited to the 2 that are available in a certain turn, to modify the number on the white die that you took, that kind of stuff. So, we're talking about building tracks, we talk about actions. Also, when you want to deliver goods, you need to be able to use good engines, so you need to develop engines, so you can take a die and cross off a box on your personal sheet, represented here on this locomotive, and that is now the power of my engines. All of the trains in my network now have a power of 2, and next turn I decide to use that die to cross off that one, and now I have a power of 2. Actually, that was power 1. I think I misspoke there. Power 1, then power 2, and hooray! Now I have power 3. The number that you use to cross off doesn't matter, the order doesn't matter, only the number of actually crossed off and blacked out boxes matters. Now I have a speed of 3. All right. Now all this, getting good engines, building your network, is to deliver goods. To deliver goods, you spend an action, and you spend a die, and the die indicates the starting area of the goods that you are delivering. With a 5, I can deliver a good, which right now is in the city number 5. And where it needs to go? It needs to go to an area of the same color. So a gray cube I could bring here, or I could bring here. You can only bring them 2 cities, not 2 towns. For example, if I do decide to use this, I look at my network. Yes, I can deliver a gray cube from there to a gray city. So ideally is doing like this, or I can do it like this. It doesn't matter. But I demonstrated I'm able to bring this gray cube from the city of the die that I selected to a city of the color of the cube itself. In order to do so, I need to have a power of my engine, which is equal to or higher than the number of cities and towns that my good is going to reach or go through. So basically 1, 2 in this case. If it was like this, and I was delivering a red cube from there to up there, then I would need a power 1, 2, and 3, which I have. And when you deliver a good, it is removed from the board, and you score a number of points equal to the power that you used, or difference is said, the number of cities and towns that your good reached. ta-da! You do not have to be to go through the shortest possible way. In fact, it could be good to go around a little bit so that you score more points. But again, no looping around. And that's pretty much one of the main ways in which you score points. So during the game, players will build their net, use special actions, deliver goods, improve their engines, and the game continues until 3 cities on the board have been depleted. At that point, you add some final scoring. So, for example, there are penalties or bonuses depending on the special action tiles that the players still control. There are points if you developed your engines at least to power 4, and then there are also bonus points for power 5 and power 6. Your network is worth points, so you will score points for the connections that you created and the towns that you went through. Another point, after all is said and done and all possible sources of points have been taken into account, the player with the highest score is the winner of the game. I like this game. I really like it. Fun stuff. For what it is, again, it's very simple, very light, but to me, with just that little bit of extra thinking that kept me interested, kept me involved. I like the fact that there is a slow build-up, which is not too slow, in my opinion. It didn't bother me, as I'm trying to build my net and get my engines, and I'm trying to time things right. And then the game really changes in the second part of the game when players have their network built, and at that point, players are just delivering like crazy. They're trying to get the die roll that allows them to deliver a good, across 3, 4, or 5 different places. They may have to take a tile that allows them to do so, because of course it's a dice game, so there is a luck element which can be considerable, but at the same time the design has enough other moving parts that allow you to counterbalance that. For example, yes, there's a bad die roll that doesn't allow me to get to deliver the good that I want, but maybe I get a tile that increases my chances of doing that next time, a tile with a special action on it. So the balance between what you can do and the randomness of the dice, to me, works fine in the game. So there is that slow build up, and then the second part of the game is frantic as you're trying to deliver goods, especially before a certain city is depleted, or you're trying to deplete a certain city before the opponent gets to complete the network that you see they're creating to be able to deliver. There is this sort of like indirect interaction, and I cannot attack your network with artillery like you can maybe in other games, but what I can do is you build a beautiful network to connect those 2 cities, and by the time it is completed, then those 2 cities are worthless because there isn't anything that can be delivered anymore. So you can deplete resources, you can deprive the opponent of resources. There is that screwage element there, which I like, which I enjoy, and it's personal but not too personal. Now, something important. I played the game with 1 player, solitaire, against Tulip, or I can't remember the name of the AI, and also with 2 players. And I really enjoyed the game in both versions. I may try with 3 players at some point, but I don't think I want to go to 4 or 5 as the box suggests, and the game components allow you to, for the very simple reason that I'm afraid about downtime. Then at that point it may get a little bit annoying, and then at that point there will be so many things to consider, then I think the interaction will drop, unless I still decide to see what other players are doing and take that into account, and then the downtime will become unbearable. But I really like the fact that with 2 players, 3 players, probably you can do that. You can look at what they're doing, and you had that interaction, which may depend on which may be expressed by where I am building my networks, the dice that I'm taking, which may affect what dice are left to you, that sort of thing, and the goods that I'm delivering. Also, with the higher count of players, I'm afraid that the first player will get to choose between 5 or 6 dice, and the last player 2. See, there's a huge difference there. But with 2 players, you have 3 dice to choose as when they're first player, and I have 2. More or less, we have the same restrictions. There isn't that shifting element there, like a player having an awesome possibility of doing pretty much anything they want, and the other player being constrained. And I like constraints, and I like the game that has intelligent constraints that force me, well, to tweak my strategy in different ways. And this is a game that does that. Again, the very point is that the dice will limit what you can do, or I should say, they'll direct your actions in certain ways, and it is about what you're able to do with the options that the dice create for you. And yes, this time the die roll is terrible. I cannot do anything with those dice. Maybe I'll get an engine point. Sooner or later I'll need them, and I can still score a point at the end. So there is that element there that I found myself rarely having a pool of dice that I could really do nothing with. It was more like, well, I cannot do what I wanted to do. Then I had to adjust and think differently and try to figure out something else. And it's about balancing that between what you want ideally and what you actually are able to do. And there's in that balancing exercise there that the game has part of its interest. Another element that I like, it's about balancing, it's about timing, because as I said, the two parts of the game are about building the network and then mainly delivering. Towards the last couple of turns, if you're still building tracks, you're probably not gonna win. But there is that interesting element there when to switch that is, if you do it too early, you start delivering goods, then you're spending a whole turn to maybe deliver a good from one town, from one city to the next, and it's a single point, one turn for a point, but you're grabbing them early, so there's that advantage there. But if you are spending a lot of time building incredibly ambitious networks, then by the time that you're able to use that, then you're not able to use that because the goods are not there. So there is that timing element there, which again to me is interesting when I'm looking at what my opponent is doing, or seeing when it is the right time to deliver goods and which ones and when. So I like it. Again, it's a very simple game at its core. But there's enough thinking and enough indirect interaction to me that is enjoyable, that is very entertaining. The box says can be played 13-year-old and up. I think that this is a very conservative estimate. You can definitely play with younger players. You can even simplify it more. You can have an extra die, so that the very young players have more options. You can always let the young player go first, and you always go second or third or whatever. You never go first, which is another way of balancing the game and makes it more fun for the young ones. If it's too complicated with the action tiles, don't use the action tiles at all. The game may take a little longer, may feel a little drier, but again, then it's very easy for young players to absorb. That is to say, I think this game also has a great flexibility, because as is, you can play it with, with teenagers, with your adult friends, with some really minor tweaks. It can be used, I think, in a vast range of different ages. Also, I think it's a good play with your spouse game, again, because it works very well with two players, and it has thinking and all those good things that I mentioned in a package, in a design that is very accessible. Many players, regular players of games, or their spouse or significant other is not as passionate about them. About games as they are. This, for example, my case, my wife only plays lighter games on the lighter side of things, and this is definitely a game that she would be able to play, and I think that she would be willing to play, and I think that she would enjoy. So there's also that other role. So I think that Steamrollers is a pretty good game. It's a smart design that works in a large variety of settings, and most importantly, it's fun to play. The level of interaction, to me, again, is just right, but that may change with the number of players. If you're planning to play it only with 4 or 5 players, I don't know about that. But please, if you did play it that way, leave comments in this video and let me know that the game is fantastic that way. Good for you, I'm glad if that is the case. I'm just not committed to that, to state that right now. What I can tell is that I play Steamrollers with 1 and 2 players, and I had a very good time. It is a filler or an extended filler, but if within that category, I think is the filler for the thinking gamer, or at least for the gamer that that knows that the planning is everything and plans are nothing. It's the process of planning and revising the plan as you go along that matters. And here the random element and the fact that the players are depleting resources forces you to do so, but forces you in a good way, because it's an element of the game that presents you with interesting problems as you go along. Overall, Steamrollers, a fun game. I definitely enjoyed it.